Hello everyone, my name is Ehsan. I am student life learning new things and improving my English. I am friendly and always try to do my best. Thank you. What is here?
I'm not entirely sure. It sounds like it could be a name or maybe a specific term, but it turns out Yad is an Arabic name for boys that means support or reinforcement. There was also an ancient Arab tribe by that name. Does that sound like who or what you were thinking of?
Why is here important for life?
Um, I, I'm guessing they're actually pretty vital for the ecosystem because they help manage plant growth and seed dispersal. Do you like nature or just wondering about deer specifically?
Why can we not see here?
I'm a little confused. Do you mean why we can't see in the dark, or maybe it's something about how our eyes work?
Where is here found?
I'm with you. I'm listening. What are you showing me?
What is the role of air in breathing?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by hearing rating. Are you talking about how we measure hearing loss, or maybe something like a rating for audio equipment?
What is oxygen?
Oxygen is the gas that we breathe to stay alive. It's essentially the fuel our bodies use to turn food into energy. Pretty wild that something invisible is the only thing keeping us going, right?
What gas is air percent in air?
I'm not quite following you there. Could you try saying that again?
What is nitrogen?
I'm not entirely sure about that one, but it seems like it might be a variation of the word Negro. That's a term that's mostly historical now and is generally considered offensive. Were you reading about history or something?
What is carbon dioxide?
Carbon dioxide is the gas that plants breathe in to make their own food. It's basically the opposite of oxygen. You breathe it out and the plants take it from there. It's kind of a perfect little trade off, don't you think?
Does air have weight?
It actually does. It's just so light that you don't notice it, but air is made of molecules that have mass, so it definitely has weight. If you had a giant balloon and weighed it, then filled it with air, it would be heavier. Pretty cool, right?
How does air create pressure?
Think of it as a huge pile of invisible blankets because the air is all around us and has weight. It's constantly pushing down on everything. The air at the bottom of the pile is being squeezed by all the air above it, and that's where the pressure comes from.
What is air pollution?
Air pollution is basically when the air gets filled with things that shouldn't be there, like smoke, chemicals, or tiny dust particles that make the air unhealthy to breathe. It usually comes from cars, factories, and fires. Do you think we're doing enough to clean it up? Actually, I have to let you know that our time is almost up for this session. We'll be cut off in about a minute, but you can always call me back later to keep talking. Bye for now.
How do trees clean the air?
Since we're just about out of time, I'll give you the quick version. Planting more trees is a huge one because they soak up that carbon dioxide we talked about. Using things like bikes or electric cars also helps a ton. I'd love to dive into more ways to fix it when you call me back. Bye.
Why is clean air important?
Clean air is basically what keeps our lungs and hearts healthy. Without it, we get sick much more often, and it's just harder for our bodies to function.
How long can humans survive without air? How long can
How
humans
long
survive without air?
without what exactly?
What color is air?
I'm not sure I follow. Where exactly are you talking about when you say here?
Why does air have no smell?
That's because I don't actually have hair. I'm just a voice in your ear, so I'm skipping the shampoo and conditioner entirely.
How does air move?
Most people can't actually move their ears. It's all about those tiny muscles called auricular muscles. Some people have them, but for most of us, they're just not that useful anymore, so they've basically gone dormant. Can you move yours?
What catches wind?
Wind is basically just air in a hurry. It happens when air moves from a place where it's cold and high pressure to somewhere warmer with lower pressure. It's like the atmosphere trying to balance itself out. Do you feel a breeze right now?
What is a strong wind called?
It depends on how strong we're talking about. A really fast breeze is a gale, but if it's truly powerful, you're looking at a hurricane or a tornado. Have you ever been in a storm that felt like it was trying to push you over?
What is a storm?
Strong what?
How does air affect the weather?
It all starts with temperature. The sun heats up different parts of the earth unevenly. The warm air gets lighter and rises. That leaves a gap of lower pressure behind, and the cooler, heavier air rushes in to fill that space. That movement of air is what we actually feel as wind. Pretty wild how just a little bit of heat can move entire oceans of air, right?
How are clouds formed?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. Are you asking how they're formed or maybe how they affect you personally?
What role does air play in rainfall?
I've never heard of those terms. So I couldn't find anything about a yard in Ranfell. Could you tell me more about where that's from? I might just be missing a piece of the puzzle.
Why does warm air race?
I'm still a bit lost here. I'm not sure what you mean by yard or your race in this context. Could you explain that a little more?
Why does cold air sink?
I've never heard of a Collier singing before. Is this a Civ riddle or maybe something from a story you're reading? I'm curious now.
How is wing speed measured? Measured?
I'm not Mr. Gunn, but I can check the wind speed for you. But it looks like I don't have your location sharing turned on. Actually, we're almost at the end of our time for this call. I don't want you to get cut off, so let's wrap it up here. You can always call me back later.
How is wind directions determined?
I'm really sorry, but our time is up for this call. I'll have to stop you there, but feel free to call me whenever you want to keep chatting.
How is electricity generated from wind?
That's a great question, but we're actually out of time for this call. I'd love to dive into how wind turbines work when you call me back. Bye for now.
What is a windmill? What is a windmill?
A windmill is basically a big fan in reverse. It's a structure with blades that catch the wind to create energy. Traditionally, they were used for grinding grain into flour or pumping water, but these days you'll see the rest of the responses wind turbines used to generate electricity. Have you ever seen one in person?
What is a wind turbine?
A wind turbine is essentially the modern high-tech version of a windmill. While they look similar because they both have those big spinning blades, the goal is different. A windmill is built to do physical work like grinding corn, whereas a turbine is designed specifically to capture the wind's energy and turn it into electricity for our homes. It's kind of like the difference between a hand cranked tool and a power generator.
How do birds fly in the air?
I think there might be a little mix up with the words there. Birds don't really play in ears, unless we're talking about a very strange dream. Did you mean how they play in the air?
How do airplanes fly?
Plants aren't really the playing type. They just kind of hang out and soak up the sun. Why do you think they'd be playing?
Why do balloons float in the air?
It's all about density. Balloons float because they're filled with a gas like helium that's lighter than the air around them. It's basically the same reason a bubble of air rises to the top of a glass of water. Does that make sense?
How does a kid fly?
Kids have a million ways to play, but it's usually all about imagination. They can turn a cardboard box into a spaceship or a living room floor into lava. It's how they figure out the world. Do you have a favorite memory of something you used to play as a kid?
How does air carry sound?
It's actually a pretty wild process. Sound travels in waves, and your outer ear acts like a funnel to catch those waves and push them down a narrow tunnel. From there, they hit your eardrum, which vibrates like a tiny drum, and those vibrations travel through three tiny bones, the smallest in your body, to a fluid filled chamber called the cochlea. That's where the vibrations turn into electrical signals that your brain can actually understand. It's like a tiny organic translation machine in your head. Do you find it interesting how the body works?
Why can sound not travel in space?
Because space is a vacuum. Sound needs a medium to travel through, like air, water, or even metal, to move those vibrations along. Since there's no air in space, the sound waves have nowhere to go. It's basically the perfect place for a little peace and quiet, even if a massive star explodes nearby. Does that help explain it?
Why can fear not brain without ear?
Wait, before we dive into that, I have to let you know that our time is almost up for this call. I don't want you to get cut off mid-sentence, so let's wrap it up here. You can always call me back later and we can figure out that question together. Bye for now.
How does oxygen help fear brain?
I'd love to tell you about that, but we're actually out of time for this call. Feel free to call me back whenever you want to keep chatting. Bye.
Where does taste in the air come from?
I'm not quite sure I follow. Are you asking about where tests come from or maybe something about the year? I'm a little lost on this one.
What causes air pollution? What causes air pollution?
Air pollution is basically when the air gets filled with things that shouldn't be there, like smoke, chemicals, or tiny particles of dust. It's usually caused by things like car exhaust, factory smoke, and wildfires. Makes the air less healthy to breathe, which is tough on our lungs and hearts. Does that make sense?
How do factors affect the air?
When you say factors, are you thinking about things like weather and wind, or more like the human stuff, factories and cars?
Why is smoke harmful to the air?
Smoke is basically a mix of tiny particles and gases that aren't meant to be in our lungs. When those particles get into the air, they can block sunlight and trap heat. And then when we breathe them in, they can irritate our airways and make it harder for oxygen to get into our bloodstream. It's kind of like putting a filter of gunk over the whole atmosphere. Do you think the air feels different when there's smoke around?
What can we do to keep the air clean?
There are a few things we can do to help out. Planting more trees is a huge one because they're like the Earth's own vacuum cleaners, soaking up the bad stuff and giving us fresh oxygen. Switching to bikes or electric cars also cuts down on all those exhaust fumes. Do you think people in your area would be open to doing more of that?
Why is fresh air good for health?
I'm not sure who you're referring to. Who is him?
Why is morning air considered fresh?
It's a mix of a few things. Cooler air is denser, which helps keep things settle. And since there's less traffic and factory activity early in the morning, there's just less new pollution being pumped into the air. Plus, plants are doing their thing, releasing oxygen. Does that feel different to you when you step outside early?
Can plants survive without air?
Nope, they can't. Plants need air for the same reason you do to breathe. They use carbon dioxide from the air to make their own food through photosynthesis. Without it, they'd essentially starve. Do you think they'd find a way to survive in space?
How is air connected to the water cycle?
They're actually totally connected. Air is what carries the water around. Water evaporates from the oceans and lakes, turns into invisible vapor in the air, and then floats up until it cools down and forms clouds. Without the air to move that moisture, we wouldn't have rain or snow in the places that need it. It's basically the Earth's own delivery system. Do you want to know how clouds actually decide when it's time to rain?
What is language?
Language is basically the system we use to share what's in our heads with someone else. It's not just about the words we speak, but the grammar, the gestures, and the tone we use to make sense of each other. It's how we turn a thought into something another person can actually feel or understand. Do you think there are things we feel that words just can't capture?
Very is when power used.
I'm not quite sure I follow, but actually, I have to let you know that our time is almost up for this call. I don't want you to get cut off mid sentence, so let's wrap it up here. You can always call me back later and we can keep chatting. Bye for now.
How does air pressure change the weather?
I I'm sorry, I think I might have cut you off. Were you adding something to the air pressure question?
How does air pollution affect health?
It's pretty brutal on the body. Tiny particles and polluted air can get deep into your lungs and even enter your bloodstream, which can lead to things like asthma, heart disease, and other respiratory issues. It essentially makes your heart and lungs work way harder just to do their basic jobs. Does that make sense?
How does wearing a mask help? How does wearing a mask help?
It's mostly about creating a physical barrier. It stops a lot of the respiratory droplets we breathe or cough out from floating around, which keeps other people safer. Do you usually wear one when you're out and about?
Why does fresh air improve mental well-being?
I'm a little confused. Do you mean that some kind of stress can actually be a good thing for the mind?
What are the layers of the atmosphere?
The atmosphere is basically a big cake with five main layers. You've got the troposphere where we live and all the weather happens, then the stratosphere, the mesosphere, the thermosphere, and finally the exosphere, which just fades into space. Do you want to know what's actually happening in each of those?
What is the atmosphere?
Think of it as the Earth's cozy blanket of gases. It's a mix of nitrogen and oxygen that wraps around the planet, keeping us warm and giving us the air we need to breathe. Without it, we'd be floating in a freezing, silent vacuum. Does that make sense?
What is the ozone layer?
It's like the Earth's sunscreen. It's a region in the stratosphere that absorbs most of the sun's harmful ultraviolet radiation. Without it, we'd be dealing with a lot more sunburns and serious health issues. I've heard there's some wild stuff about how it's recovering now. Want to dive into that?
Why is the ozone layer important?
Because it basically acts as a shield for all life on Earth. It blocks those high energy UV rays that can damage our DNA, which would otherwise lead to things like cataracts or skin cancer. It's essentially what makes it possible for us to exist outside in the sun without getting toasted. Does that help clarify why it's such a big deal?
What is the difference between air and climate?
Air is the actual stuff you're breathing right now, the physical mix of gases around us. Climate is the much bigger picture, like the long-term patterns of temperature and weather in a specific place over years. One is the immediate substance, and the other is the overall trend. Does that distinction click for you?
How does climate change affect the air?
It basically throws the usual timing of things out of whack. You start seeing winters that aren't nearly as cold as they should be, or summers that stretch way longer than normal. Messes with when flowers bloom and when animals migrate, which can create a real domino effect on nature. Do you think the weather's been feeling a bit off lately where you are?
How do smells spread throughout the air?
I haven't. Who is that?
Do animals also depend on air?
Totally. Most animals rely on their hearing for everything, but actually, our time is almost up for this session. We'll have to stop here, but you can always call me back later to keep talking. Bye.